Tom Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring yours truly, Tom Martin. I'm a lifelong journalist. I've produced stories for CBS News, ABC News, CNN, and so on. And these days, I love asking thought-provoking questions, meeting interesting people, and that certainly includes my co-host, Mr. David Parker from San Francisco. David is the author of two excellent books, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative, and a book of essays to be published very, very soon. Don't miss that. And we get together for thought-provoking conversations, and that reminds me, we'd both love to include you and hear your comments and thoughts. So make sure you pass them along on the YouTube channel or wherever you are watching or listening to this episode. But let's just jump right into it. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm fine, thanks, Tom. Nice to see you.
Great to see you, sir. I love, because of our collaboration here, I had one of the perks and bonuses is that I get an advanced look at your great essays, which are really, really thought-provoking and really, really quite deep and insightful. And the most recent one that you shared with me, I think would make an excellent topic for this conversation, because I still see so many people, like the old expression, from years ago, it's like there's no free lunch. I get the sense there's still a lot of people wandering around the streets of America thinking there is a free lunch, and the government it's the holiday season as we're recording this, kind of like Santa Claus will give great things to you for free. It's amazing. And you reminded us that the world does not work that way, and that especially when it comes to some of our progressive friends, Bernie Sanders and so on, there is a hidden cost that we're all paying. We may not know it, but if we just woke up, we'd know we are paying it. You want to share your thoughts on that topic?
I guess underlying theme would be that the middle class are paying for everything. And if they knew that, they may want to know, well, what are we paying for? I did a very quick review of some hidden costs that it's shocking. Well, healthcare, for example, everyone knows is probably 2 or 3 times higher than any other nation in the world. And one reason is the government stepped in that field, and to such an extent that it's not a market phenomenon anymore. Consumers, patients, are not bargaining price. Nobody cares what anything costs. And when that happens, price goes up because companies, pharmaceuticals cannot resist seeing how high they can charge before somebody objects. And nobody objects, and they keep raising the prices. 2 or 3 times, if consumers or patients could keep that differential. Health insurance before Medicare was the same as auto insurance or life insurance or insurance on a single family home. $1 million single family home, it's about $200 a month. That's what life insurance is. That's what auto insurance is per car. Health insurance was that. For a young person, it was about $50 a month. And it was that even at the beginning of Medicare. For the first 10 years, it didn't really. All of a sudden, it started to go the other direction. Health insurance is maybe $1,000 a month. And some people I know are paying maybe $2,000 a month for health insurance. Even at $1,000 a month, that's $800 difference when it should be $200. I'm talking $22. I'm not talking about $1964. Today's dollars. $800 a month times 12 is $9,600 a year. Minimum is probably more. You could put you're paying that.
And yeah. No, I know you're I'm sorry, go ahead.
That was one example.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, as we've discussed a number of times, I know you're concerned about bloated administrative, agencies and the federal government. I used to live in Washington, D.C. To walk on one block, in front of, one of these agencies, the EPA or whatever, it takes, they're huge, huge agencies. And some people say, well, there's a role for those agencies and so on. But it's interesting to me, sort of at the same time that we're paying the cost of all that administration and interference in our lives, so to speak, we're also, there's certain fundamental problems like the cost of healthcare that government does not seem to solve. Is that because the pharmaceuticals and the companies and the hospital agencies and so on, I'm sure they have deep pockets as donors to political campaigns and so on. But why is such a fundamental problem not being addressed?
That could be a very good answer. We have health insurance being paid for by an employer starts during, I guess, the Great Depression. No, during World War II, when they had wage and price control, because we're fighting a war, and employers were saying, we can't get employees. So we have, and we can't raise our wages. Can we give them health insurance? And someone said, okay. So they started giving you health insurance. And health insurance is a write-off for the employers. So it lowers their taxes. And it's really salary that they would have given to an employee, but the employee doesn't get it. And that just kept rising and rising. Those employees now who are not getting that $800 a month that they would go in their own bank account. And whenever government gets in, it's just not as efficient as the private sector. Another example, it's not a big example, but Social Security, the employee pays 7.5%, or 7.5% is taken out, and the employer contributes 7.5%. That's 15%. But the employer is not contributing. That's the wages he would have given you. Your wages are lower because the employer has to pay that 7.5. That's 15% for Social Security. That's not pension, that's Social Security. It's just the supplement. It doesn't have to be 15%. That's a wild number. And for a young person, it makes it very difficult to save money to go buy a house and get a start in life. 15% of your salary being knocked off for Social Security over and above income tax and health insurance. That could be 10%. That money could go into a very safe bonds or very safe stocks, but that money is not invested. Congress was so afraid of that Social Security Act that they wouldn't allow that money to sit in the bank account. Workers contribute, and immediately it goes to those who are retired. It's not sitting in the bank account. They didn't want to have Congress with billions or trillions of dollars at their disposal, knowing what Congress would do. So that law was written so it's immediately transferred. It's not earning interest. So how can they be paying you? And then they raised how much contribution the government was going to return for Social Security during Nixon's age to about almost 8%. They're paying you 8% on your money, so you retire pretty nicely on Social Security, but the money is not invested. Where's that coming from? Today it's coming from borrowing because there's far less people working than are retired. And 15% was never even necessary. And this is a side fact, I guess, but when they initiated Social Security, it was to help people who were 65 and older. And the first payment didn't go out until 1941, even though it was instituted in 1935 during the Depression. Nobody got any money until way, way, way later. And it was perverse on another, I'm getting off target, but it's all true. It was perverse in another way. In 1935, not many people lived much more than 65. And most minorities did not live at all. So it's a contribution by minorities that they never, at that time, never got their Social Security. And most people didn't get it. It was a real scam. And now we're paying for it because people are living to 85.
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's not enough workers for it. It's all paid for by borrowing. It's not government's.
Interesting. Well, I do have a follow-up question, but I just want to take a real quick minute to let all of our viewers and listeners know that this is a San Francisco Conservative, the title of our podcast series. Myself, Tom Martin, and my co-host, Mr. David Parker, author of Income and Wealth and book by the same title, a San Francisco Conservative. And if you like what you're hearing and stimulating your thoughts, I know it's stimulating mine. I'd love to hear from you. David would love to hear from you. If you happen to be watching this on your YouTube channel, our YouTube channel, put your comment down below. We'll get it. And otherwise, please email us. Again, David's website is davidparkeressays.com. And you can find me on social media as well, of course. But let's continue with our conversation. It's interesting, again, recently in the news, I think there have been a few protest marches of young people, in their 20s saying, thank goodness Joe Biden is giving us free college education. Where's the money? Because apparently not long ago, a court intervened and said, excuse me, Mr. President, you do not have the authority to just wipe the slates clean when it comes to college loans, as nice as that idea might be. I mean, I know Bernie Sanders was in favor of it. What do you make of that situation?
Well, that's what politicians do. In this case, that would be politics from the left. We're going to give services to citizens. And politics on the right, we're going to give services to business. And both parties are guilty of fraud. That money is not there. It's paid for by borrowing. And why should government be giving money to anybody? The purpose of government, as this nation was set up by the founding fathers, was to protect a neutral third party, to protect life, liberty, and property. We don't want private armies or private police departments or individuals walking around with a body of samurai to protect themselves, carrying guns. So we have a neutral third party, police and fire and courts. That's it. That's all our government was set up to do. Article 1, Section 8 is enumerated powers. Government can have a post office, they can have a navy, they can do a few things that we want them to do, and that's it. The states are completely free after that to run their own, and citizens are free to run their own life. And if you don't like your state, you leave your state, or you create your own. The Mormons were so picked on, they just left and went to Utah. Here's our state. Really, if you don't like it, get out of here. That's how this country was set up, and that's how we got all the states to sign on to the Constitution. Okay, we're like little independent countries. Fine, that's how we feel we are anyway. The founding fathers got it right. And we flipped that in 1933 with Franklin Roosevelt. Government is our friend now. But that's not how it was set up.
Yeah.
Now we're paying the price for that.
Yes. Speaking of government as our friend, I was sort of reminded of, I guess, one famous line that Donald Trump gave us when he was running the first time around 6 years ago was, you're going to be winning so much, you're going to get tired of winning. And it's sort of similarly, the American public is enjoying all these freebies. Said, are we ever going to get tired of receiving these freebies? And, as I said earlier in our conversation, are people going to wake up? It's like, oh my gosh, there's a price tag attached to this. Some people, Alexandria Octavia-Cortez, for example, said, well, make the rich pay for it. How do you see the situation shifting anytime soon?
No, it's one reason I write, because as a wealthy person, and I know I'm not paying much in taxes, because the wealthy don't pay taxes, period. And that amoral position began to bother me. I'm willing to pay some taxes. And so maybe that's immoral that the wealthy are not paying taxes, because you can't get it from them. If anybody is smart, if you want to generalize, the wealthy are probably smart. So their accountants won't let it happen. Every wealthy person, when he was a child, read Robin Hood. We all know you're coming after us. So you can't tax the rich. You can't get it from them. You can tax them 70, 80, 90%. You won't get it. You can make it a law, you're not going to get it. The rich have income producing assets. And whenever the income is getting too high, you borrow against those assets such that there's no income. You're paying interest on the loan. The interest is a tax write-off. You have no income to show. The government is refunding you money left and right. The rich are being refunded. They're not being paid. And if they can't get out of that, they do what Apple does. And many companies like Apple, their headquarters is in Cupertino, California, near where I am. Beautiful space station. Their headquarters is Ireland. And all their money, at least 200 billion, probably more, is on Jersey Island, a tax haven in the English Channel. That's how it goes. You can't get it.
Yeah, yeah.
You've all heard of Switzerland. That's a tax haven, or was. Cayman Islands. That's where the money is.
Yeah, yeah.
There's probably 20 or 30 trillion sitting in those tax havens right now.
Amazing.
Worldwide, not just America.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We'll have, I think, two kind of interrelated questions. We have about 5 minutes or so left in our episode here. But one, I'd like to hear more about your essay on the hidden cost of progressivism, because I have a feeling that it's not just a minor percentage of our annual income, those of us who are in the middle class, say. I know you really took pen to paper to calculate it, to make it real. And then number two, I'm just curious where you think this is headed. Are young people, I was going to say, are young people waking up to this? I guess maybe many of them are the same people who are anxious for those free college loan write-offs, so maybe they're not. But I'd like to think that the young generation is aware that you don't get something for nothing. So I'm just curious about your thoughts about both those topics.
When I think about this essay I just wrote, I realize that politicians are not talking real numbers. Cortez and Sanders, yes, government should pay for this and this and this. Let's take care of the less fortunate. But no one's ever saying it's going to cost this much, and the middle class is going to pay for it. And it's money that you would have in your pocket. Your standard of living is probably being reduced in half. You don't notice it because every country in the world is doing the same thing. There's a populist base that says government should take care of things. In Peru, they just got rid of their president, who said they're going to almost bring back socialism to Peru, and they threw him out, that new president. And some people are protesting. He promised all these things, and now they're throwing him out. But no one puts a number on it. I put some numbers on it. Maybe would be a wake-up call. Healthcare is probably $9,600, I said. Social Security, that's about $2,500. Not a month, a year. $9,600 a year. Social Security, at least 25. I'm using really low numbers, so nobody can say I'm exaggerating. Public education is public. The government stepped into education. It took private schools from 1890 and amalgamated them into unified school districts, but they're not run very efficiently. And more we spend on government, the test scores have gone down. The hidden cost, one hidden cost, is that more and more parents are sending their children to private schools. And they're paying property taxes. You're paying property taxes as an owner of property. And if you're not an owner, you're a tenant. And your landlord is not, you're paying your landlord's property taxes. The landlord's not taking it out of his pocket to pay. He has a certain return, and then that's how his rent is calculated. And property taxes is in that rent that you're paying. And they're high because so you're paying that, and then you're not benefiting. You're taking money for one child is 20,000, 20 to 40,000. If you have 2 or 3 kids, you can multiply that. But I just took one child, and you have 3 kids. 1 kid goes to private school, 20,000. It's probably costing you 40,000. So I'm not exaggerating the numbers. There's another 20,000. And I think I had another one. 1 second there. That's enough.
Yeah.
Right there. That's 38,000 a year that you're not getting, but you're paying for.
Yeah.
It's hidden. If everybody knew that, the middle class is really paying for it, maybe they would say, wait a second, why don't we remove government from all these services? Let's go back to the founding fathers who got it right. Government doesn't provide services. It protects you. It doesn't. That's it. That's my message, by the way.
Yeah.
All my writing.
And I just want to follow up on that. I guess this is probably our last question in this conversation, but give us a sense of the cost. I mean, I know you gave us the dollar figures, which is huge. Of course, people don't think about that, but the cost of give us a sense of the cost. I guess if we had those extra thousands in our bank account, in our pocket, it would fuel the economy. There would be greater prosperity. People, living below the poverty level, would benefit, I'm sure, by job creation and so on. I'm sure there are many ways if we weren't stymied or suffocated in this way that a lot of people aren't even aware of. But then again, I know you're a dedicated student and scholar of history, and take us back a few centuries. What happens when the debt gets so monumental? Love to hear your thoughts on that.
All right, well, there's two things I can say. One, there's a risk when the debt gets high, is that the interest, especially when interest rates are higher now, the Fed has been raising the rate. When the interest rate is zero, which it had been since the financial crisis in 2008, you can keep borrowing and borrowing because you're not paying any interest. But all of a sudden, if you have a 6 or 30 trillion budget deficit that we're paying interest on, if it's 1%, that's I can't figure that one out anymore. Or 8%. Face it, 24. We're paying 2.4 trillion if it's 8% interest, and we're paying nothing if the interest is low. 2.4 trillion every year. Pretty soon, that's rising. There's no money left for actual services. There is 3.3 trillion budget. All the money is going to pay the interest on the debt. That's the point. There's nothing left for services. And in Rome, the soldiers didn't protect Rome from the Huns that came in with their sledgehammers because they hadn't been paid, and there was no way they're going to be paid. They just let Western civilization crash.
Wow.
That won't happen, but that's, in theory, that could happen.
Yeah. No, it's an important topic. I'm glad we have the benefit of your wisdom to hear more about it, and I hope that many people will listen to this episode. Again, this is a San Francisco Conservative. If you like what you hear, if it's what you've heard, if it's provoking your thoughts, as I know it's provoking mine, so to speak, please share the episode with friends, subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you don't miss an episode. And also, I highly recommend David's books, Income and Wealth and a San Francisco Conservative. You can purchase them and read more about them and other essays by visiting his website. That's davidparkeressays.com, or you can purchase the books by going to Amazon. So, David, any closing thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, yeah, you brought out from me examples from the past, and that's what my writing is. So readers can see, wait a second, in 5th century Athens, 2,500 years ago, or 1st century Rome, 2,000 years ago, 18th century Age of Enlightenment, you read those people, those authors and those scholars and those thinkers, and they talk like we do. It's shocking. And they're talking about the same things, only they're talking about it at a much higher level of discussion. It's fascinating. And I bring out examples, and I'm a person who's been successful in business, and I give examples in business for everything that I'm talking about, real numbers and real business situations. So my writing is very interesting. It's worth reading for that alone.
Yeah, no, I love that quality as a journalist who's been immersed in sort of the news of the day, and that's it. You've opened up a whole new world to me. I love that quality. So thanks again. I enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to our next one.
All right. Thank you too. Thank you.